Welcome in. Another big day in the Oklahoma recruiting world as Danny Okoye commits to Oklahoma. And, I think this is something that a lot of people had projected, including Josh McQuestion, who joins us live from the home base studio. Josh, good evening. George, good evening. Welcome in.
Thank you.
It's been another monumental day for Oklahoma recruiting, though, as Danny Okoye makes the announcement. And Josh, let's just kind of set some bases here. As I believe that we're going to be joined by Danny here shortly. He's still at his ceremony where he made his announcement today in Bixby. But let's start here, Josh. Big time get for Oklahoma and Todd Bates. The defensive line, I know that we talked about it on the unofficial 40 today. This is kind of one of those dream classes, if you will. Even without Williams-Nwaneri, this is kind of what Oklahoma fans have been wanting and clamoring for moving into the SEC next season.
Yeah, I mean, if you talked to me a year ago and you said, what's the best case scenario, it would look a lot like this defensive line class with Danny Okoye, David Stone, Nigel Smith. Jaden Jackson, I think, is a really underappreciated guy by some. He's an ideal nose. So just adding to what they had. And Wyatt Gilmore, I think, I mentioned him and Woke this week. I think he's got a chance to maybe make a move up the rankings. Like, he's impressed some people so far his senior year. But Danny Okoye is just one of those guys that you can't teach what he's got. You're not gonna learn, he's not gonna become that explosive. Like, I don't care what you do, who your strength coach is. There are certain guys that have special gifts, and Danny Okoye is one of those guys. I know our guy on 3, Cody Belair, talked about him being like an all-American off the bus kind of guy, and that's exactly what he is. He is a lot of raw tools that if Oklahoma can get it all headed in the right direction, is a potential special, pass rusher in what's going to be the SEC in his career.
Josh, is this the best defensive line class that Oklahoma's put together in the last 20-some years?
I think it is. I think the last one you would put on this level was that 2006 group that I've talked about before with Gerald McCoy, Jeremy Beal, and Adrian Taylor kind of being the 3 headliners. And Beal was a guy not unlike I'm talking about Jaden Jackson and Wyatt Gilmore. He was a late throw-in. Like, he wasn't a guy that had all the attention, and he became a great player under Brent Venables and that staff. So, who's to say that Jaden Jackson or Wyatt Gilmore couldn't emerge? Because something that people, I think, tend to forget, they talk about all the success that Todd Bates and Brent Venables had with defensive linemen at Clemson. They kind of forget that a lot of those guys, not all of them, but a lot of those guys were not the 5-star, no doubt prospects that Clemson certainly signed plenty of. They were the Grady Jarretts. They were the, Vic Beasley, I believe, was another one. Like, so you look at some of their roster and some of the defensive linemen they produced through those years, they weren't the guys everybody wanted. They did a really good job with development. And I think that's something Oklahoma wants to be the best of both worlds. They want to develop a guy like Ashton Sanders from last year, but at the same time, they want David Stone to be the special talent that he has the ability to be.
Let's talk a little bit about Danny. We talked about it on the unofficial 40, which you can listen to. I believe it's already up on Spotify and any type of podcasting platform. But I remember when you went up there for the first time to see him. And I think Bob even might have saw him. But I remember going back a couple springs ago even. And just the reports that you came back with and said, yeah, this guy might be a dude. But what he's developed into. Let's talk about the player that Danny Okoye is and what Oklahoma is getting.
Yeah, and that's a great story, Eddie, because it was a situation where I was going through Tulsa that day doing the Oklahoma tour that we do every year, and I had seen enough. Noah had 2 players. Ezra Ballinger as well, the head coach's son, is a quality player as well, and I wanted to go see both Danny and Ezra. And I thought, well, okay, I'll only need to stop by for like 20 minutes because this Okoye kid looks really good on tape. But I bet when I see him, he's 6'2" and he's 220. Like, he'll be a little underwhelming physically. And so I get there. Well, it's pouring rain. Like, it's just a torrential
of
downpour
course,
in Tulsa.
Oklahoma during the spring, right?
Exactly. It was just, and that year was so bad. I think I missed like 10 practices that week. It was brutal. So I'm like, okay, coach, well, can I at least meet the kids? And so, they're all kind of hanging around, and I'm looking around and I, the guy that we now know Danny as like, I don't see him. And so I'm like, well, okay, let's just do this. We'll take some pictures. And, I see Ezra, and he's, a good looking offensive lineman. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, there's Danny. And I turn around and you're like, oh God. Like, I mean, it really was like that kid's everything I hoped he would be.
Sure.
Like, cause I mean, Eddie, you've known me a long time. You've been on these tours with me. Like, I get excited. Like, I see that kid on tape and I'm like, I want to see him. And then you're like, oh, he's probably better than I thought he was going to be physically. And again, I mean, 6'4", 240, incredibly muscular. Like, I mean, like, he's a guy that he's what you want. Like, he's what the modern pass rusher looks like. And to know that he's as good as he is at this point, and even against, when we've seen him in some camp settings and he's going against a little better competition, nobody's a match for him because his physical tools are just off the charts.
What is, I guess, and it's hard. I mean, obviously he plays homeschool ball in the Tulsa area. Just from a projection standpoint, is he a type of guy that could come in as a freshman and be able to contribute and be able to be somebody like a PJ Adebore, who is, I know I'm never going to get the name right. I get it. But in terms of when he gets to campus, how quickly can that turn on because of those physical tools, or will it take a little bit because of the level that he plays at currently?
I think it's not unlike PJ. I mean, like, I think he's more raw than PJ is. There's no question. But he's also more physically developed. Like, PJ is longer arm, longer levered. He's just a bigger, longer guy. So the physicality is what I wondered about a little bit with PJ. Not that he's not a physical player, just, getting to that weight, getting that strength up like he would need to. But with Danny, I'm not as concerned about that. It's just him learning the technical aspects, understanding what his role is in the defense. But, we talked about it a little bit in the pod earlier today, Eddie. There is an idea that he could absolutely be a guy that is, kind of a third down pass rush specialist where it's just, hey, Danny, 3rd and 15, go get the quarterback. Kind of not unlike the way that LSU used Harold Perkins last year, just kind of letting a great athlete go and chase the ball, like just go get it. And so I think if they can simplify it down to those terms, he can be an impactful guy. If you told me that was his situation, if you told me he had 5 sacks as a freshman, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Like, I think he has that kind of ability, and I don't know that everybody's read it yet. I put the commit breakdown of him, and I compared him to Kwity Paye, a guy that was kind of a developmental prospect that Michigan signed several years ago, ended up being a first-round pick of the Indianapolis Colts, and same kind of idea, real toolsy, very raw, going to need to learn a lot, but there is so much there to like from Danny.
Well, and I think that you just look at, the momentum that Oklahoma's building, and, how big is this for the Miguel Chavises of the world, for the Todd Bates of the world that I think Oklahoma fans were probably a little bit impatient with at the beginning, but this last month has just been incredible. Talk about the momentum that Oklahoma's currently building, not only in the 2024 class, but moving forward. I mean, this is going to be important year after year after year to start stacking these types of classes because of the looming move that is ahead.
Yeah, I mean, guys, talk about how dramatically it changed. I mean, you remember,
oh my God,
it was minutes ago that David Stone was like a heart-stopping scenario.
Right.
Everybody was convinced.
Yeah. It's insane.
And
go ahead, Josh.
But, so now, So now you look at it and you have, Danny kind of building on that momentum to follow David Stone, to follow Nigel Smith. And when you add those guys, like I said, to Jaden Jackson, to White Gilmore, who are good players that Oklahoma identified and wanted early on. So those are guys that Oklahoma does value. And I think when you add that to what they did last year, where you hear some positive reviews of Ashton Sanders, you obviously PJ we know is a special talent. Marcus Strong, you hear some good things about, and then Taylor Wine, there's been good talk there as well. So they're starting to rebuild that room and put it together in a way that can play at the level it needs to. Because guys, we all know if this is a Big 12 team, this class doesn't end up at Oklahoma. This is not what's going to happen. This is the fruits of moving to the SEC, having a staff that knows how important it is to recruit that position. And, I mean, guys, you look at it since, Taylor Tatum? this has been the summer of the defensive line. Like
Right.
we've just been, watching OU land one guy after another here. And I like I said, I couldn't be more impressed. I really thought after the Williams and everything, you're like, man, this could go sideways. It just felt like the momentum wasn't right. And Miguel Chavis and Todd Bates, they just stayed the course and have done an unbelievable job.
Yeah, and for those wondering, I know I'm kind of manning the comment section here. Danny will be joining us pretty shortly. That's why we have that spot there underneath Josh. I know Bob's on the scene.
Bob's on the scene up in Bixby right now.
So he's trying to get Danny, who's getting pulled every which direction. So it'll be nice to hear from him. But Josh, I wanted to dive in a little bit on this recruitment because a year ago, and I know you mentioned it a couple times, but a year ago, it did not seem like OU was even in the race here. They quickly turned things around. I mean, what was it that maybe sold Danny? I know he came on an official visit a few weeks ago. How has this recruitment gone basically, and how did OU maybe turn things around in this?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster because I think a lot of people say, a year ago, Oklahoma didn't have a chance. I thought a year ago, Oklahoma probably was the choice. As the season went on, it just felt like he kind of saw, this might be slipping away from Oklahoma. This is going to be a problem. And he talked about it in the story we ran right as he committed. For those that haven't seen it, we've got a lengthy interview with Danny, really covering a really large range of topics. You get a feel for the kind of personality he is. He's a very open book kind of guy. But Danny talked about going to Oklahoma for a visit before the change, before Brent Venables took over, and not really liking what he saw. Like, it wasn't a bad visit. It just wasn't what he had hoped it would be. So he was kind of hesitant to return. And so he kind of saw Oklahoma kind of, obviously we all saw kind of flailing on the field last year. And then at the same time, he had that, that remaining feeling of where they were with Oklahoma. Where they were as a campus and what that environment was going to be like. So he turns that around, and finally Oklahoma works and gets him there in May. And he really didn't plan to come. That was not the initial idea. And I think Oklahoma just kind of won him over time. Miguel Chavis, namely in that group. And as that goes on, he just kind of liked what Oklahoma has. He saw that the environment had changed a lot. He talked to some of the players. I know Robert Spears Jennings was very big in this. He mentioned him as a guy that he'd had a lot of communication with and got a kind of a feel for what was going on. Robert being a Tulsa area product from Broken Arrow. So I think Danny just was kind of patient. And then once he knew, he committed during his visit. He talked about it, said he had to go into the bathroom and make sure he wasn't rushing things. And he came back and handed, Brent Venables the all-in poker chip that they give all the recruits. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting story. And to watch him walk through it, he talked about Tennessee not wanting him to take his trip in May, that first kind of visit after he put out his top 10 when he goes back to campus. And Tennessee really didn't want him to take that trip. And as he just said, I kind of want to see this and see what it's like. And from there, Oklahoma just kind of gathered momentum.
It's crazy to think like they're winning these type of recruitments. Like it
was not too long ago that they were in it. They just could never get over that hump, right?
Right. I mean, they're closing on top guys like this. And I think it speaks to the emphasis of recruiting in-state talent. Not to say
100%.
That, obviously Danny is very highly rated and somebody that I'm sure the previous staff would have recruited. But again, they are doing really well in the state, Josh. And I think, I don't know, who knows if the previous staff, lands somebody like Danny, but to put together this class, especially on the defensive line, it's just super impressive. And again, it makes it even sweeter that it's a kid that is right down the road in Tulsa, which OU recently has not been great at recruiting in the 918. Simply. So
I mean, Gentry was kind of that first guy that was like, oh, okay, Oklahoma can go back up into Tulsa.
It really, I mean, guys, and this is when people think, it doesn't matter. They're recruiting these guys, or they're going to see this school that doesn't have any D1 guys. This is why you do those things. You have those relationships pre-existing. The staff knows they can trust you. They know you're going to back up the things that you say, and you're kind of ready to go. And so that's how you develop with a guy like Danny Okoye and start to have a chance to land a guy like that.
I think we will be joined by Danny
my name?
Okoye here momentarily.
There he is.
There he
Y'all hear
is.
my name?
What's up, Danny? How you doing, man?
What's good, y'all?
Congratulations on the commitment to Oklahoma this evening. I think that Oklahoma fans feel like this was a long time coming. Just let's start first off. Why Oklahoma? Why Oklahoma over Tennessee and Texas?
I mean, it's just different, man. Like once you get here, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like everything they building, everything that they pushing for, with the defense and really just as a team as a whole, I can really buy into it. I've been down there. I've been making relationships with coaches, with players, with just people on the staff, and everything's been great. I haven't had anything that made me, look at them sideways or anything. And it's just been great, a great atmosphere. I can really see myself growing there as a man, not just as an athlete. And that's really what I'm looking for.
Danny, there's been a lot of talk about this defensive line class being one of the best in recent memory at Oklahoma. I mean, how much did that play a factor in, being able to play with guys like David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Nigel Smith, Wyatt Gilmore? I mean, how good can that group be with you guys?
Hey, I mean, you can already see what OU's D line is turning into already. Like with the defensive games that they played in the last 3 games of the season, it's already setting the tone. And just seeing how I could, develop my game and get better and just deepen my bag, just in that program with all the expertise that they have. I really think that the potential goes through the roof, with the other recruits who have committed there, the other recruits who are, maybe going to commit there. And with the people that they already have on the team, they already have some powerhouses on the defensive side of the ball. So no matter what, it's going to be smooth.
Yeah, you hear Danny talking, maybe going to commit there. You can tell he knows something. He's got something under that OU hat. But,
Yeah.
I guess, Danny, we talked on Monday night when we kind of went over all this. You mentioned something, and it kind of stuck with me because it sounds like something – I don't know if Brent Venable said it to you, but it sounds like something that would come out of his mouth. And you were talking about how much, you've got to develop, there's a lot you've got to learn and grow and that kind of stuff. And the quote I think you said was, I want that adversity. I want to be pushed. I want to be forced to change. What, is that something that that you get from OU, or is that just who you are as a person?
I mean, that's really just who I am. I don't really like a lot of, easy, I mean, I do like it easy, but I don't like it to where it's easy enough to where I feel like I'm not fulfilling what I could really fulfill. I want to achieve my full potential, and I don't want to just, go somewhere and they're like, oh, you're going to start right away. We're going to make you the star of the defense. I'm like, I don't want that right away. I don't want to just have it handed to me. I want to earn it, and I want to get better while I'm earning it. So that was really intriguing. Yeah. Like Coach Chava, he never told me, you're going to come in here and you're going to start right away. He never promised me that. A lot of other schools did. And the fact that, he poured into me so much, but he never said, you're going to come in here and you're going to change the whole defense right away, and as a lot of other coaches would try to do. That's all recruitment talk. And, spending a lot of time in the journey helped me to be able to differentiate what was real and what wasn't. So.
Talk a little bit about your relationship with Coach Chavis as well as Coach Bates. I think that one of the things that the current players talk about so much, and especially that defensive end group with Coach Chavis, is even though he is still so young in his coaching journey, he really connects with these guys. Is that kind of your experience with him as well?
100%. Coach Chav and Coach Bates, they're my peoples. Like, those are my dogs now. Like, we've really just progressed the relationship as much as possible. I talk to them as much as I can. They're busy, I'm busy. But whenever we have time, it's always a great conversation. And, I really just like the relationship that we have, not even just as, coach and recruit, but just as friend and friend.
Danny, the big news with Oklahoma is you're going to be playing in the SEC next year. I mean, how much did that factor in, and how excited are you to go up against that competition playing in the SEC?
I mean, it definitely played a role in me picking. I definitely feel like I'm more of an SEC type of guy. Every other conference is great, but I want the biggest and the best. So the SEC is the most violent conference in college football, and that alone just, ooh, you feel me? But hey, it is what it is. I'm gonna play football wherever I can, but if I can play football as violently as I can without having to worry about anything, that's where I want to play.
I think OU fans will like to hear that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's one of those times when you get to say I'm violent, and it's totally great, Danny. Like everybody's
Yeah,
happy with that. That
man,
works, man.
I'm a violent pacifist.
I love it. Well, now one of the things that again from our conversation, and for those who haven't read it, go to the front page, Sooner Scoop. Danny and I think he gave me about 25 minutes that night. We had a long talk, but with the story that I thought probably stood out the most, and I know it did for you as well because it's something you singled out, was talking about that conversation you had with Caleb Kelly and kind of understanding that Caleb had all these big goals and big things he wanted to do, just like you do. And then life kind of threw him a curveball and he had to kind of adapt to that. So how much did that play a role? Because I know it did in you kind of saying, hey, I want to think about not just football, but what my life would be like after football.
And it definitely had a big impact on my decision, because football is only going to be for a little bit. You're not going to play forever, no matter how bad you want to. And really just having a support system around you that will help you take care of that second stage in life after football before it ever gets there, and you don't really have anything to worry about. It's definitely comforting. Um, Venables is very big on, building up the man before you build up the athlete. And that weighs that's a very big, people don't understand how much gravity that has. Because a lot of people do it the reverse way. They think they work on the athlete first and the man comes after. But it's not that way in Norman. And, I want to be a good man before I become a good football player. And I can really see myself doing that at OU.
Oklahoma moves up to number 8 in the team rankings with your commitment tonight, Danny. And when you start thinking about the group of defensive linemen that you're going to be playing with in your class, David Stone, Nigel Smith, Wyatt Gilmore, Jaden Jackson, how exciting is that? And then also kind of knowing in the back of your mind that I think in the recruiting circles, this could be one of the best defensive line classes Oklahoma's brought in quite some time.
Hey, if I'm gonna make history, I'm gonna do it. I'm the first homeschooler to do all this. So, if I can make history in another way with the OU's D line, I'm gonna do it as well. And, it is what it is. I don't really care too much about what other people do. I'm not gonna say I committed here because Stone did or because Nigel flipped or, whatever happened. I went here because I felt like it's what's best for me, and that's all I can really do. Um, it definitely is a plus. I'm not gonna say I I I, I don't care at all because it definitely is a bonus playing around a good team of guys. And I've already made some relationships with the guys on the D line, guys that are going to be on the D line, and they're good peoples too. So I don't have any problem with them. And yeah, I like it. That's all I can like.
Danny, did those guys recruit you at all? I'm sure to Oklahoma. I mean, did you hear from those guys tonight as well? And then are you going to do, I guess, some of your own recruiting moving forward?
We'll see what happens. I ain't gonna spill too many beans yet, but we'll see what happens.
Now, Danny, I know you've kind of been fighting through an injury a little bit, but I've heard from a birdie you might be back on the field this Friday night, might be ready to go.
Hey, ready to go is kind of a stretch, but I'm gonna get on some Tylenol and see what happens.
Okay. Well, when you do get back, and I've got plans to see you later in the year. I think I'm gonna catch you in Louisiana actually, but when you look at the rest of your senior year, and I know obviously last year you guys went and won the national title, all those great things. What are the things that you're trying to, I guess, end your senior year with, as well as improve on as a player? I mean, what do you really hope to accomplish with this final year of high school?
I want to get my bag as deep as I can get it. I mean, I feel like I've been really just raw power. I haven't really had a lot of finesse to my game, especially like looking at last season. There's been a lot of just, bullying people, but that's not all it is to being a D lineman or just a guy on the defensive side of the ball. You have to have a certain level of finesse. And, I've been working with Chief Littlehead. I've been working with a lot of other trainers and stuff just to try and, give me some tools I can use so I don't have to beat them with strength. I can beat them with, this right here. And I think I'm getting better at that for sure.
Danny, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Does it feel like a little bit of weight has been lifted off your shoulders now that this is done for you?
100%. As soon as I picked up the hat, I was like, oh.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Well, we appreciate it. Congratulations on the commitment tonight, and have a good, safe senior season when you get back out on the field, and we'll probably be seeing you down in Norman here pretty soon.
All right, sounds good to me.
You bet, man. Have a good one.
Thanks, Danny.
Appreciate you. Have a good one.
Danny Okoye, the Tulsa NOAA